Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweeten Torah. So today we're going to talk about the month of Chesvan and how it is the month of Moshiach. And we're going to get some help today from the amazing book by Rabbi Gad Erlanger, and it's The Sign of the Times. And it's a great book. I really recommend it. And let's jump right in. Okay, so what Rabbi Erlanger says, he says that, well, I'm going to go a little further back. We start in the month of Elul, and we start to prepare ourselves. We take that whole month and we start to reflect on some of the mistakes we made in the past and who we want to be going into the future, into the new year. And we start to do teshuvah. We prepare to do teshuvah. We're doing teshuvah. And then we reach that first day of Tishrei, and we do teshuvah, and Hashem is judging the world. And on that day, we want to recreate ourselves into this new person that we want to be for the new year. On Rosh Hashanah, the year starts, and we want to not make the mistakes we made in the past. We want to be these better people. So the month of Tishrei is so elevated, it's so spiritually elevated. We have Rosh Hashanah, and then we have the 10 days of Teshuvah ending in Yom Kippur, and then we go right into the Sukkah for the 7 days of Sukkot, and then Shmini Atzeres, we start the Torah again, and Simchas Torah, we dance with the Torah, and it's such an amazing, spiritually packed and elevating month. So it's interesting because the month of Chesvan, we began to find out who we really are. So Rabbi Erlanger, he says in his book, so if we didn't really do teshuvah, if we see that we're not as elevated now, because who we are now in this month is who we really are. But if we're not living up to the ideals of who we wanted to recreate ourselves into being, if we're not reaching that spiritual elevation that we had in the month of Tishrei, we start to fall. We start to fall into the ground. And the Midrash calls it like a scorpion crawling on the ground through the thorns. And it's a month of falling. It's a month of we see, and it's a supernatural month too, because this is the 8th month, and 7 represents the physical, the natural world, because we see that every week consists of seven days. So we have the 6 days of creation and Shabbos, which creates these weeks of 7. So 7's the natural physical world, and 8 is going into the supernatural. It's going beyond that. So this is a month of supernatural potential, and we see something interesting. Even though the leaves are falling from the trees, they take on this beautiful masterpiece painting of all these beautiful colors and stuff. So they don't just turn like some ugly brown and fall right off. They blossom into these amazing colors, and then they fall. So it's this spiritual falling. The days are getting shorter. It's starting to get colder, and we start to have this mix. We have the opposite of spring. We start to have this mix of the hot and the cold. And things are cooling off. And if we're not reaching that potential that we wanted for ourselves in Rosh Hashanah, we start to fall. But in this darkness, we can ignite the light. We can ignite the spiritual growth, and we can really become who we want to be. And that's the supernatural quality of Chesvan, and that's why it's the month of Mashiach. So sometimes Chesvan is called Mar Chesvan because it has no festivals inside the month. But there is, in our Mitzvah, in our tradition, there's a teaching that the third temple, the third base of Mikdash, will be built in this month. So this month is empty right now, but when this darkness is reignited, we're going to see this amazing rebuilding of the third temple in this month. So our goal, our spiritual work in this month, even though it's Mar Chesvan, it's bitter, is we want to sweeten the bitter. We want to light up the darkness. And then if we do teshuvah, and if we raise ourselves up from the ground and from the darkness and from the cold, and we ignite the warmth, we want to also bring warmth and kindness and compassion to the coldness of the winter that's coming. And we want to bring that warmth, and that warmth can ignite everything. And that's the spirit of Mashiach. That's the spirit of Mashiach in this month. So let's take a look and some of the things that happen in this month and how this is going to lead to the ultimate elevation. So we see on the 7th of Chesvan, Tzidkiyahu, the last king of Yehuda, he was actually killed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, on the 7th of Chesvan. On the 11th of Chesvan, Rachel Imenu, Rachel, our mother, she died on the 11th of this month. And on the 17th of this month, the flood began in the days of Noah. So we see all this destruction and ending and things, but this is all going to lead to the rebirth and the building of the third temple. So let's look at something really interesting. So Rabbi Erlanger, he brings from Shmos Rabbah that Malchus, that monarchy and a kingdom, is related to the moon. Malchus is related to the Levana, the moon, And a month is related to the moon, and the cycle, because the cycle of the moon is it goes through this monthly cycle. So first, at the beginning of the month, the moon starts to grow, and then in the mid month, it's full, and then it starts to wane. So it's a fascinating idea that's brought in the Shmos Rabbah, this midrash. So Abraham Avinu, he was like the Rosh Chodesh. He was the first one that brought this reawakening of the knowledge of Hashem and the Torah and the mitzvos into the world, and it was like the beginning of this month. And that went 30 generations, and things began to grow from Yitzhak and Yaakov, and then we became a nation, and Hashem let Moshe lead us out of Mitzrayim as a nation, and then Yeshua took over, and the Shoftim, the judges, and then the kings, and we had the kings from David HaMelech, so we had this amazing monarchy, and this nation bloom. But 30 generations later, the light was put out by the death of Tzidkiyahu, when Nebuchadnezzar, and he killed the sons of Tzidkiyahu in front of his eyes and blinded his eyes to try to completely eradicate the monarchy of David HaMelech. But it's interesting because the Malchus can never be eradicated, because just as the moon begins to grow and is full and then it wanes, but it always comes back, and that's the secret of the Malchus of David HaMelech. That through and all the Jewish people, really, that we have our moments of fullness and greatness where we shine in the world, and then we have moments where we start to walk away from Hashem somewhat, and we're diminished. But we're going to see a reawakening of the Malchus in this month. This is going to be the month of Mashiach. Now, also with Rachel and Menu, it's really fascinating because like Yaakov, Jacob, he worked 7 years to marry Rachel. But Rachel, her father Lavan, tricked Yaakov and really married Yaakov to Leah. And then Yaakov worked another 7 years to marry Rachel, and it was 14 years, and I think he stayed another 6 years to build his own, parnasa and his wealth for his family. So he stayed there a total of 20 years. And during that period, Leah had 6 sons, Zilpah and Bilhah, who were the maidservants of Leah and Rachel. They had 2 sons each, so 4 more sons. And Rachel finally gave birth to Joseph. So then Yaakov knew it was time to go back to Eretz Yisrael. And on the way back to Eretz Yisrael, Rachel died. And she died in the town or the city of Bethlehem. And it's fascinating. And there, with the famous, Pesukim in the Torah, it shows in the Nevuim, in the prophecy, the Nevi'im, the prophets bring this beautiful prophecy of that the tears of Rachel, that she's crying for her children. And she sits there in Bethlehem, and she cries for us in our gullus, in the cold, dark exile, until we all are going to be reunited back in Eretz Yisrael. And it's fascinating because Bethlehem is exactly where David HaMelech is born. That's exactly where the monarchy of King David begins, in Bethlehem, and that's where Rachel, was nifter. So we see, the whole world was destroyed in this month, and right now it's this dark, bitter month. But it's our job to really reawaken ourselves, find ourselves in the spiritual darkness of this month and in the coming cold, and see the supernatural potential. And we have to warm up the sting of the scorpion, the Akrav, who is the mazel of this month. And we can overcome that by finding the warmth and the kindness and compassion to each other. And we can reawaken in ourselves and find in the spiritual potential of this month that power of Mashiach. And it's also interesting because the sense of smell is also related to this month. And it's the only sense that wasn't tainted when Adam and Chava, when Adam and Eve ate from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They they beheld the tree, and they heard the lashon hara of the nachash, and they tasted it with their mouth, and they used all the senses, and they touched it, and they used all the senses except smell. So smell, that sense, was the only untainted, one of the senses that wasn't in that avera, wasn't in the chet of Adam Arishon, and it's that pure sense of that smell that it will, that is connected with Mashiach. It's the only sense that it's still totally pure and hasn't been tainted in this physical world yet. So there's great potential in this month, And this month is going to, by finding that, by sweetening the bitter and bringing the light in the darkness. And then if we do it properly, and we do teshuvah, and we lock into who we want to be this year, then we shoot up into next month, the month of Kislev, where it's the archer with the bow, and we shoot up, his arrow shoots into the Shemayim, and we shoot up to the light of Hanukkah and the miracle of the light in the darkness. And so may we all, find ourselves and find our strength in this month of Mashiach, and find our, our spiritual elevation, and by kindness to others and compassion, and start to light that light in the darkness. And let's may we soon see the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash in the month of Chesvan. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you again soon on Sweet and Good Torah. Thank you very much.